special. With the latest install of our water tank, we needed to protect it. So the big focus this week has been to set up our solar portable electric fence system. So we purchased this solar kit from Cyclops, which is an American company that creates low impedance fence chargers for larger livestock such as sheep and cattle and things of that nature. We actually had it some days ago and set it up in kind of in the nighttime because it just had to be done that way. And here's a pro tip: don't reel your poly braid at night. It's just a bad decision. But in any case, we came out and set up the whole solar fence system with the charger and whatnot. However, since it was so dark and I had to set the electric reel on a pallet on some plastic, and it was just a real kind of janky setup, I came back out and spent some time and set the fence up correctly and just made some changes to make it overall better. The solar system for this fence charger is really cool. It's all self-contained and made out of Trex plate, which is a recycled plastic made to look like wood, so it can withstand the temperatures outside and mostly the extremes of the heat here in Texas and the colds in other regions as well. So you face it south, mount it to a 2x4 and go. We have it in a very temporary position right now, as the fence we need is really set up to protect just an area that we need during construction, so that the cattle don't come in and mess up what we're doing. But the components are really cool. Basically, it starts with the solar panel, and you can see when you lift the lid, the solar panel has wires that go inside and they connect to the charge controller. And the charge controller's primary job is to accept the erratic electrical wave from the solar panel and regulate it. And once it regulates it, it also sends that current and the electricity into the battery. And the battery is actually what powers a off-grid solar system like this, and it gets recharged with the panel through the charge controller. Now the battery itself is it's a deep cycle battery, and I believe I got an AGM for this one. I don't know if it's a flood acid battery. I'll have to check that out, but either one would work just fine here. After it gets stored into the battery, the electricity then goes over into the Cyclops fence charger, and that fence charger has some terminals on the front near the bottom, and there's a positive and negative. Now once you go, a wire gets attached to that terminal and then goes out the bottom and then goes over and connects to the fence to make it hot, to make it live. And then the negative terminal actually is the grounding terminal, and that also goes out the bottom and goes over and then connects itself to a series of copper rods. Basically you need 6 feet of ground rod for every 4 joules. This particular fence charger is it's 16, so you actually need 4 and 16 stored. So you're calculating for the stored. The output is 12 joules, which is pretty awesome. And how you actually read that is they sell it at like 200 acres. That's what 12 joules would do. Carry, but you could also look at it as 12 joules. A rough way to make sense of that is you can probably do 12 miles of fence. So it's more than what we need here on our farm, but as we have plans, or potentially if we have plans to expand with our neighbors, this would cover that, no problem. Once the system is turned on, then current starts coming through the system. And we basically use these fence posts that can be pulled up out of the ground and move to wherever we need them for however big a cell or operation that we need. Now I ended up getting a couple of Gallagher reels, geared reels for the polybraid that I'm using in this system. I really like them a lot, actually. They're not the lightest weight, but they're not so heavy that you couldn't work with them. Reeling them up, if you get basically a 1/4 mile of poly braid, like 1,320 feet, I believe it is, and you're winding that up all at one time, it does get a little tiring. When I came out and set the system up, I didn't have anything to mount it to. Since we don't have a more permanent fence where a reel would normally sit on, I had to, create this very interesting system out of 2 fiberglass corner posts, some PVC, and these like triangles, ground triangles. Couldn't quite figure out how to get that to work in my head until I just went to a local farm store, and I just said, look, these things will work, and I put it together, and ends up working really good. It's temporary, so this whole entire system is going to get moved in the future. It's been a year. I know, right? A year since I've grew any food or gardened almost whatsoever, other than some aloe vera and some potted plants on our current patio. That's just too long. So now that we have a electric fence system, it does now make sense to go ahead and set up a garden, because before the cattle would just come on and trample and eat anything that we've done. I called Curtis and asked him if he'd bring over 3 non-sprayed, very old and starting to rot straw or hay bales that he had, and he did have some. Brought them over, and they're just absolutely gorgeous. Hardly any good for feeding cattle, which they would come in here if I didn't have them protected, but by all means absolutely fantastic for making a garden. So I'll be commencing very soon getting some wheelbarrows, going to get lovely nitrogen in the form of cow poop, and wheelbarrowing that over, combining it with that and some 5-gallon buckets worth of pond water, and we're going to get this compost and garden going. One of the really cool things that I had came across about a year ago is this tool called an extractigator. Now, since I'm going to garden a little bit in an area, and I'm going to go ahead and use the new rainwater tank to kind of gravity irrigate the crops that we're going to grow, it's a little bit messy. It needs to be cleaned up. We did have a skid steer come in with a tree puller, pull up all of the big honey locusts, but there's still some little ones there. So I specifically went out and got this extractigator for the purpose of pulling little honey locusts out, because as everybody knows, if you just chop them down, they just become more vigorous in their root system and sprout 3 more. It's like a hydra pretty much. So it's a cool little tool. I liked using it. It's not too much of a job, but there's still some work involved. Now it is winter time and it's a little cold, but there is something about finding a little stream and just sitting down and doing a bit of prayer and meditating on how good God is. Hey, I love you guys, but I think I'm going to do that. I'll see you next time.